Using pattern quilting, this would be your process for normal edge to edge. First of all, we'd select our area. Turn on our laser. Of course, don't move your head too quickly. Not snail's pace, but not very fast either. All right, so we'll mark our maximum quilting area. Done. No boundaries. We'll select the design we're going to use, modify it, change it to the proper size. Place it in our starting position. Chain it. Save it. And then quilt it. Now, rather than going through all of time to quilt, what we'll do here for this demonstration is I'll just go ahead and move all the way to the end of the quilt and change our. Everybody already knows how these things work, so there's no sense in wasting your time watching the machine go forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards. So we'll just cut out all that part. All right, we've just finished our first row. So the next process normally would be to overlay it, modify the overlay, move it down. In this case, it's minus 4.2 is the offset, 4.12. And then quilt the second row, which again we'll skip. We'll overlay it again for the third time, modify the overlay, lock the X, again, offset it by, in this case, 4.12. Again, we'll zip all the way to the end of the row. And of course, yet again, the same process. Until we've got as many rows as we can fit in the pattern area. Once this is done, we would advance our quilt and start the process all over again. So we've done the same thing 4 times in a row. So here's where this additional process comes into play. I would suggest you start out the same way with your pattern quilting and mark off your basic area. So what we're going to do here is mark off the area that we're going to quilt. No inner boundary. Select our design, modify it, change the size. Place it. Chain it. Now this time we're not actually going to quilt it. Once we've got it set, we're going to save it, and we're going to exit out of this. Now what we're going to do is work our way back to the main menu, and we're going to select designer instead of pattern quilting. And we're going to design on the quilt. We'll start off by marking our quilting area. Now this is where you're going to save a whole lot of time, a whole lot of work. All right, we've marked the area. Now we're going to go to, this is the design that we just saved a moment ago. And in this particular case, we're going to do 4 rows as a single pattern. So we need to select that 4 times. And if you look down here, you'll see that we have the same thing 4 times. Cubot calls them seeds. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put these in basically where they're going to go, just so we can kind of see them. And we're going to change their size to 100% so that it's the same size as the one that we saved. And if you use the OK up here instead of using the done, you won't have to keep flashing back and forth between the adjustment screen. Now, even though, there we go, on the size window, when you move between these, it's going to show the last size in the little yellow boxes that you last looked at. It's not showing the size that that particular line happens to be. As soon as you actually select that, either the X or the Y box, it'll correct itself and put the current size on it. So now what we'll do is we're going to move these to where we want them. And minor adjustments here. Maybe a little closer. And 4 of them. Now, of course, depending on the size of the pattern and the throat depth of your machine will kind of regulate how many of these you can do. All right, so we're going to do 4 because this is on a 26-inch machine, and I've got about 22 inches of quilting space. So, and the pattern's 4 inches tall, so it'll easily do 4, won't quite do 5. It would be a stretch to do 5. All right, so once we've got it done, we've got our 4 of them. We're done. Now this is your linking screen. Because the start and stop points of these, let me back up a little bit. Let's go back to modify. We're going to take our second and 4th rows, and reverse them. All right, I'm done. Back to our linking screen. Because the end point and the beginning of one row and the beginning point of the other one, if you were to draw a straight line between them, it would cover over the top of the pattern. So if you look at it, this is what would happen. You see that line that's going on, it disturbs the pattern. So we don't want to do that, so we'll go back so we can undo that. What you could do is you could do a curved line and have it go from the end of the first one to the beginning of the second one and make it curve around the back of it, but it's a little bit distracting. I'll do a separate video on explaining how to use a straight line, curved line, automatic snap, when you would probably not use them. This is a case that I probably would not use them. So at this point, what we want to do is we're going to save this new 4-row pattern as a single pattern and with a distinct name. 4-row waves. Spell waves right. And we would select quilt now. And what would happen is we'll actually do that here. We're not going to actually quilt it because we don't want to save that time. So we move up to the head beginning spot. And we would start quilting. Now I'm going to pause it, move it to the end of the first pattern at 100%. We'll move the head down here. Now I speeded some of this up so you wouldn't want to move as fast as it appears on the screen here. Now we've just made it as if it had just quilted that entire row. So it's going to finish it. Now, because we didn't link these, it's going to do a jump stitch between them. So we're going to go continue. It's going to move to the beginning of the second row. We would start quilting. All right, we're going to pause it. We're going to move to the end of that row. We'll move to the 100% spot. Pick it back up again. All right, it has finished the second row. So we would do the same as we did before, and that is we'd continue. When you do continue, it's going to move to the beginning of the next segment and continually we'll go through the same process for rows 3 and row 4. So once it would be done, we're going to and All right, you notice that the blue line is the line that it's going to do. So right now it just went to the next one. It says the last row is our last one. Because it's the same process, I'm just going to skip that next segment. And that would be we're done. So we exit. At this point, we would move the quilt up. And once the quilt's moved up, we would start that same basic process again. We're going to do, except this time we're going to use a pattern quilting. We only use the designer to make that 4-row design. From this point on, you can use the pattern because, as you're going to see, we have a new design that has all 4 rows in it. So mark off our area, new inner boundary. Now we're going to take our the design that we just saved, modify it, put it at 100%. Now you notice that the whole thing's going to move as a single piece. So we can put it at 100%, move it to where we want, done, and move to start. Now it will do the same thing we just did a few minutes ago. And that is it's going to do the first row. You can tie off, select continue, it'll move to the second row, tie it down, press go, it'll go through that row. So it's going to, in this case, because we reversed second and fourth rows, it's going to go to the right hand side of the first row. It's going to quilt right to left in the second row. We'll go through the continue, go again. It'll quilt from left to right on the third row. Same process again, and we'll quilt from right to left on the bottom row. We'll be back done again. You advance your quilt and just keep going. So in this case, we don't need to do any of that. Save your time on the screen. Using the back button doesn't always work the way that you might expect. All right, so that's the simple way of doing, using an edge to edge for multiple patterns, and you just go all the way till you get to the end of your quilt. Now, in this case, we used a design that is chainable. What if you had a quilt with a row of, say, 4, 5, or 6 blocks with sashing between the blocks and borders on the outside? And you have, in this case, we're going to say 4 blocks, and you have 4 different designs, and you want to put one of those designs in each of those 4 blocks, which normally you would have to do the pattern quilting. You do one block, you mark off the second one, then pick the second design. You have to do that process over and over and over again 4 times. When you get to the next row, you have to do the same thing, same thing, same thing. So it's a whole lot of switching back and forth. With Designer, you do not have to use patterns that are chainable. You could use the link function and link the patterns together, but if there's a space between them, like you're going to see in this one, you wouldn't want to use a link because you'd have stitching going across your sashing. So here's a way that you could do that, and you might, let's say for instance, you have 4 rows, and you have 4 rows of 4 blocks with sashing. You have 4 patterns you want to use, but on each row you want to change the order that you stitch them in. So for this case, I'm going to call them flowers 1, 2, 3, and 4. So on the first row, you'd set them in that order. The first block is flower 1, second block is flower 2, so forth. On the second row, if you wanted to mix it up, maybe on the second row, the block on the far left would be flower 2, the second block would be flower 4, the third would be flower 1, and the fourth would be flower 3. You could do your way all the way through those by using Designer. If your quilt is very precise, all of the blocks are the same size, all of them are the same width apart, it's a very well-made, precise quilt, then you could use, if you wished, you could save the 4 patterns, which you'll see in a moment, and then just mark out the second set of rows and just have it do all 4 of them again. But because in Designer, once you save a pattern, you can't change the spacing of them in that saved pattern. You can change the size of them, but you can't change the spacing. So if your pattern that or design that you're using pretty much fills up the block that you're going to put them in, and your quilt is not very precise, you probably wouldn't want to use it because they wouldn't be centered in those blocks. And you'll see in a moment. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to start with Designer. And we're going to design on the quilt. And we're going to mark our 4 blocks. You'll see it as it comes on the screen here. So we'll go here. This will make more sense when you see it done. Because when you're marking points, if you have a closed pattern, the last point is going to connect the last point with the very first point. So if we go done, it automatically draws, in this case, that line all horizontally on the top. So now I've got my 4 blocks. We of course have patterns on the side, and we have sashes above and below. So what we're going to do here is we're going to select our flowers that we're going to use. 1, 2, 3, 4. Done. Now I'm going to go up and make these 100%. I've already previously set them to the size it's going to fit to save time. You all know how to do that, so no sense in wasting your time on that. Now we'll go through and make all 4 of them to 100%. Now you notice that when I move to here, I have 100 and 100. Now, if you open up Designer and you notice this little blue box in the bottom right-hand corner, if yours is in the middle, not in the right-hand corner, then you do not have the latest update. This is one of the things that they changed in the latest update, so that that blue box wasn't getting so close to one of the designs. When you try and select the blue box, sometimes it would collect that design. You have to kind of fool around to make it fit. So they also fixed a couple other bugs. So we got them generally where we want them, so now we'll adjust them to where we want. Now this is a case where you definitely would not want to link these because there's a space between them going across the stashing. You don't want a stitching line going across the stashing. So once we've got them adjusted, we select Done. Now, if your quilt is precise and your designs do not go right up to the edge of the blocks, you could save this and just do like we did on the last one. Just do a pattern quilting, pick the whole thing up as a single piece, put it in, adjust it to 100%, and start quilting. But if your blocks aren't exactly the same, and you use that process, they won't quite be in the center of your blocks. So we can still go, it's still a lot faster than the pattern quilting means by doing all 4 of these at once. So what we would do now is, in this case, I'm not going to save these. I'll just say quilt now. And move to start, and it's going to move to this flower on the left. It'll start quilting it, We're going to save some time and move to the end of the first one, move it up to 100%. And so let's go. All right, and it's going to finish quilting it, and it's going to pause, and it's going to put us into, we can select continue. When we select continue, the head's going to move to the beginning of the second design, wherever that happens to be. We would start continuing it, or press go. It's going to start stitching it again. We'll move it to the end of that one. When you press continue, it moves, and we finish that one off. Once it's done, we'll do exactly the same thing for number 3 and number 4. And you'll end up with all 4 of them. You only had to mark out your blocks once. And it's a lot faster than having to finish, mark it out again, and move on and on and on. But you notice that the nice thing about Designer is that the designs you pick do not have to be chainable. They do not have to be point to point. They do not have to be edge to edge. They can be any designs that you wish. You may or may not want to link them. And like I say, I'll make another video on explaining the link command. When V3 was first released, they did explain the straight line, but they didn't explain the curved or the auto link function. I'll try and explain those. They both work. The auto works great under certain circumstances. The curved works, but it's pretty limited as to what it can do. But there are situations where it comes out quite fine. All right, well, so I hope that gives you some insight into some faster ways of doing quilting using the Designer, and it's really a very powerful tool. All right, thanks.